Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Jacob and Jacob podcast. Today we're very lucky to be joined by Les Bowen. Les, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Les is working for the Inquirer right now, covering the Philadelphia Eagles. He's covered them since 2002. Prior to that, he covered the Philadelphia Flyers. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So our first question is obviously a lot of anticipation for this Philadelphia Eagles team, a team that was plagued by injuries last season and didn't really get to show their full potential, obviously on the offensive side of the ball with all the receivers that went down during the year with Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey. For you, what do you think is the most intriguing piece to this team coming into the new campaign?
Most intriguing piece. I guess it's got to be Jalen Reagor, the first-round pick. We don't know, with the coronavirus quarantining and the postponing of all the on-field activities, we have no idea how ready he is to play in the NFL, whether he can start this year, whether he will pick up their offense and the way they like the patterns run and all that stuff well enough to be a strong contributor. But he's the best player they added on offense. And, I think he's a huge key to their future. So you'd like to see something this year that indicates we don't know what kind of year it's going to be, if it's going to be 16 games, what the heck is going to happen. But you want to see Jalen Reagor show that kind of ability. They passed up what some people thought was a better player in Justin Jefferson to draft Jalen Reagor. And you want to see Jalen Reagor look like a guy who's going to be like a Pro Bowl receiver, at least in the future.
Do you think they should have picked Jefferson, or are you satisfied with the Jalen pick?
I was really surprised. Their explanation makes sense that they really wanted speed, and they think Reagor is better suited to the outside and so forth. I would rather just have the better player. I mean, speed is great, and they needed to add speed. I hope he turns out to be a better player than Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Not just a faster player. I'm not sure if they should have done that or not. I would have loved to have seen them, given the fact that they used their second-round pick on Jalen Hurts. I would have loved to have seen them try to trade up a little bit and get CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
I think most people think is going to be a superstar.
Mm-hmm. That
would appeal to me very much, but they didn't do that. So I think if you're going to stay at 21, I guess Reagor is, it's up. They did more research into this than I did. So for now, anyway, you have to accept their value of this. Now, 10 years from now, if Justin Jefferson is a 5-time All-Pro and Jalen Reagor's out of the league, then, I'll have a different opinion.
Yeah.
And they also brought in Marquise Goodwin. Do you think that was a good move for the Eagles, or do you think that they should have done something else?
Marquise Goodwin, I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised, but he's been hurt for years. His best year wasn't really that good when you look at the number of times he was targeted versus the number of catches he had. They really hyped that up, but the team that had him basically gave him away for pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen real often when the player is good. I don't know. I don't expect a whole lot out of Marquise Goodwin. And I think if things work out the way the Eagles hope they're going to work out, with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside making a big leap this year, with Deshaun Jackson being healthy, with Jalen Reagor looking ready to play, I don't know if Marquise Goodwin makes the team, really.
Really?
Well, who knows? But right now, I don't think they're setting a spot, there. This has to be Marquise Goodwin's spot. Nobody's going to take this away from him. I don't think he's on a minimum contract for 1 year, and, he'll help the young guys in training camp whenever there is a training camp. But I don't know. We'll have to see if he has a real role or not.
Do you think JJ can make the jump from year 1 to year 2 after a sluggish year 1?
Yeah, I hope. He's a nice guy and he works hard, so I hope he does. But he showed nothing. I mean, I was astounded at how bad he looked. he didn't get a lot of chances after the first half dozen games or so, but he was profoundly unready to play in the NFL. And, there were some real trouble signs there. The lack of separation. I don't know that you really fixed that. I mean, that has a lot to do with quickness and your hips and, things that you don't just get better by doing that a whole lot. You can't make yourself into a guy who gets separation. You can make yourself into a guy who doesn't ever drop the ball or a guy who runs very precise patterns. Yeah, but you can't make yourself somebody that gets a step on a defensive back, at least not very easily. So I hope he's going to be better. I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he had a great preseason, and I thought he was going to.
Yeah, but it was very limited. It was basically one game. He had one really good game against the Ravens guys who ended up not being on the team. So, but all training camp, they raved about him because he was working hard. He was doing everything he was supposed to do, and nobody knew until the intensity got ramped up that he couldn't get open.
Do you think that he might not even make the team this year, or do you think that the Eagles will stay?
Second round pick, I think he'd have to be really awful. I think the ball would have to be bouncing off his face mask a lot for that to happen. Second round pick, make the team, yes. Play, maybe not. You're going to have 5 or 6 spots for receivers, probably 6. He could end up being the 6th guy, but I would imagine he's on the team at least one more year. You just don't give up on a second-round draft pick unless the only time you ever see teams do that is if they've changed general manager.
Yeah.
And the general manager who's running the team now has no responsibility for having drafted this guy, and he somebody else's mistake. See what I have to work with here, That's not the case, obviously, here. So I would imagine he's on the team.
So let's flip to the other side of the ball, defense. Who's a defensive player you expect to step up this year?
Good question. Well, I would love to see Jalen Mills really embrace that safety role that they've given him, Malcolm Jenkins' job. I think there's a lot that has to happen for that to be the case. Jalen's a decent guy who, much like Arcega-Whiteside, works hard, does all the right stuff. He's tough. He has, a really good mindset. He just isn't fast. So maybe this will be a good role for him. But the key to the team, on defense, I think, is the cornerback situation.
Yeah.
And there, you want to see Darius Slay come in and be a number 1 corner, which he has been in his career, but he wasn't last year in Detroit. You also would love to see Sidney Jones really become a starting quality player, stay healthy, keep his confidence, and maybe get a little bigger and, really blossom. The shelf life on that happening is getting pretty close to being over with. I think he's going to have a really good training camp and whatever they do, preseason wise to be in the plans this year. Because Jim Schwartz showed at the end of last season that even when Sidney's playing pretty well, he's blown so many chances now that I don't think Schwartz has any confidence in him whatsoever. Now, there's a new defensive backs coach. Maybe he, looks at things differently and really advocates for Jones, and Jones back in there.
Yeah.
But, his career is pretty much on life support at this point.
And
do you think it's going to be the opposing corner aside of Slay, or do you think that it's going to be Maddox?
It's got to be one of the two of them right now. I don't think there's any other, you're not going to go on the free agent market. You're not going to find somebody else. Obviously, you didn't draft, anybody that's going to jump right in there. So they're depending on that. Avonte Maddox, I think a lot of fans assume that he would be a much better option because he had that nifty rookie year where they had so many injuries at safety and at corner, and he bounced back and forth and played very well for a rookie. Last year, though, he got the neck injury in the Green Bay game, and even before that, he was kind of struggling a little bit, second year, sophomore, jinx, or whatever. Avonte, he's a 4th-round pick. We'll see. he's got a great mindset. He's a real
Yeah.
tough kid who's you know, has a lot of attributes you like, but he's very small. And I don't know. Sidney Jones is better equipped to start on the outside physically than Avonte Maddox, but Avonte Maddox might be better equipped emotionally and mentally to start in the NFL than Sidney seems to be.
Yeah.
Are you disappointed that the Eagles decided to bring in Darius Slay instead of Byron Jones from the Cowboys?
I don't know yet. I might be. I certainly would have, if they wanted to pay the money that Jones ended up getting, that would have been okay with me. You know, I think he's very good, and I'm not sure after last year that Slay is that caliber of player. Maybe he is. If he is, then they were really smart. But I would have supported bringing in Byron Jones. I really would have. Yes.
And do you like also bringing in Nikel Roby-Coleman?
Yeah. I don't think he's much better than some of the other guys they have, like Crevon LeBlanc, but at least he gives you another guy at that level, a solid veteran pro who has played in the league, been in big games. I actually covered that NFC Championship game at New Orleans where he took the most famous non-penalty in the history of the NFL, probably. And he was really, I was impressed by him after the game. He spoke about it. He, admitted, yeah, probably was a penalty. I like the way he handled himself. But he isn't a standout. He isn't a guy that's going to make a huge difference, I don't think. I think he has to play inside. I don't think you can play him outside very effectively. And I think anybody, the rookies and the veterans coming in from other teams are going to be really affected by this lack of on-field work. And I think probably somebody like LeBlanc starts a long way ahead of Nikel Roby-Coleman. What that means ultimately, I don't know, but I think it could be significant.
Was that the loudest you've ever heard a stadium after that non-call? I got to ask.
Oh, yeah, that was, I was watching from a very high vantage point in the Superdome press box, and at the time, it didn't look that egregious just in real time.
Yeah.
But then you saw the replay, and you were like, "Oh my God," there's no way you can argue that didn't change the outcome of the game. I mean, they were driving, they were very likely to score a touchdown there. They would have at least kicked a field goal and had the lead and would have tied the game and would have, probably gotten to overtime. Instead, it was just a real, very rare. A lot of times people claim that penalties change games. That penalty actually did change who went to the Super Bowl. And that's something you can't have that. I know they're going to get rid of the rule about reviewing pass interference, and I think that's the wrong thing to do. I think they just need a sky judge to make these decisions rather than relying on, New York or whatever. I think they just decided referees didn't want that rule last year, and so they wouldn't use it when it was instituted. And I don't think you ought to let people do that. I mean, you're the owners and the general managers are the ones who are supposed to decide these things, the referees. And, I think they should have taken control of the process. But I guess that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you on that point. I think that Sky Judge would definitely be very beneficial. And now moving back to the Eagles on the defensive side, TJ Edwards, a player that they're certainly looking to step up at linebacker. The Eagles, obviously, a lot of questions surrounding their linebacker play for this season. How do you see him filling his role this year?
Yeah, I like that guy. I don't know him real well. He's bigger and more physical than some of the linebackers that they've drifted forward over the last several years. I don't think he's great in coverage. I don't think he has a lot of speed or he would have been drafted. But he can be a really good early down guy. I think he has good instincts and he's tough and physical. And I think he can play a role. Their value on linebackers is so small that it could be tough for them at that position. They really haven't made a big move there, and they had Jordan Hicks and they had Michael Kendricks and they had Nigel Bradham. I still think I was trying to get hold of Nigel this week. I still think they might bring him back at a lower figure.
Yeah.
I think he wanted a certain amount of money to come back, and they weren't interested in paying that. But Nigel's still unsigned, so maybe he changes his mind. So they need somebody with some. I guess the point I'm struggling to make here is T.J. Edwards is okay, but they really could use somebody with some portfolio there.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the linebacker market in free agency, there's guys like Dante Fowler who was available.
Yeah.
Blake Martinez, Joe Schobert. Do you think one of them?
They just weren't going to spend money there. They just weren't interested. To them, it's not an important position in their defense. They feel like they can play 6 or 7 D-backs if they need to, and literally. And they really like that safety linebacker hybrid type, and I think a lot of the league is kind of in that. But I would feel better. You need one linebacker who's really good, I think, and I'm not sure they have that.
Do you think that if they bring back Bradham, he'll be a starter, or do you think that he'll maybe be a mentor role to the younger linebackers that they brought in?
Hard to say, but I would guess he would start if he comes back. I would guess if I were him, I wouldn't sign here unless I was pretty sure that I was going to have a chance to start. I mean, nobody's going to give him the money that he really wants, but as teams get going, guys are going to get hurt. He'll have opportunities at some point. He's not a bad player. I don't know that he needs to take a role as a backup.
Yeah, he's a very good football player.
Yeah, he is. He's had his ups and downs, but he's had some really good – when he's been healthy, he's played hurt a lot, which people don't factor that in too much. I think when he's totally healthy, he's a heck of a player.
Let's talk about another injured player right now, Alshon Jeffrey. What is his future with this Eagles team?
Boy, 4 months ago, I would have told you there wasn't one, but it's a weird year. They would have to swallow a lot of dead money to get rid of him this year. They didn't make a lot of moves at the wide receiver position, so much that he's not, he couldn't possibly work his way in. It's really hard to trade an injured player who's 30 years old, I don't see that working out. So I think he's here, and we'll see how he recovers. He's not going to be ready before like mid to late September, October, maybe. He's not going to be really ready to play. So they're not going to have to make it. They'll probably put him on PU if he's still here. If they can't trade him, or if they don't decide to eat the dead money and release him, he'll go on PUP or something, and they'll make a decision around mid-season as to whether he can help them or not. But I don't think he's gone, but I also don't think he's going to be a very prominent part of the team, at least in the early part of the season.
And you mentioned potentially trading Jeffrey. What sort of value do you think the Eagles could get in a trade for him?
Until he's healthy, nothing. I mean, with the contract, he would have to agree to redo the contract, take the minimum, and the team getting him would have to have talked to the doctor who did the surgery or who's doing his rehab and get like glowing, like, oh my God, he's just doing so well. Everything's so great. He's going to be right back where he was 3 or 4 years ago. I think a lot has to happen for him to get traded for anything. It's not going to be, even under that scenario, more than like a 5th round pick or something like that. How many years does he have? Does he have any good years left? That's the question. You don't trade for a guy because he has a great rep because of what he did 5 years ago. You trade for him for what he can do for you in the future.
And there is the possibility that the Eagles do decide to hang on to Jeffrey. And do you think that if they do hang on to him and he does come back and is able to play, do you think he could serve as an asset in this offense?
Oh, yeah. If he's healthy, I think he's still a pretty good player. He has to kind of reconcile himself to the reality of where he is. I think this happened to him a little bit in Chicago, where he got kind of dissatisfied and disgruntled and, got himself kind of written out of the plan there, or wanted to be written out of the plan there. He kind of has to look at where he is now in his career and what people think of him and really get on the same page with Carson Wentz. I think the root of a problem there isn't, I don't think, personality related. I think it's, you probably heard this before, but Alshon's really good at high pointing a ball and going up and getting it. Yeah. Well, Nick Foles throws a very soft sort of lob kind of pass comparatively. And Alshon found it very easy to time Nick's passes and to make those kinds of catches. Carson throws a harder, flatter pass. And many times I've seen Alshon just not quite, try to catch it while he's still on his way up or not quite be ready for it, and it isn't as good a fit for him as Nick Foles. But Nick Foles is gone. There's no Nick Foles. So Alshon just has to reconcile himself to that and do the best he can under these circumstances. It's great that he had Nick Foles. He won a Super Bowl because he had Nick Foles, but that's over. And, the sooner he kind of really wraps his head around that, I think the better chance there is that he will have a significant role in this year's team.
So let's stick with Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. Who's the best Eagles quarterback in franchise history? I got to know.
Donovan McNabb had the best career. Now, Wentz is still, you hope, early in his career, You could also say that 4 years in, it hasn't really been the career that the Eagles were hoping for when they drafted him second overall. I don't know how much of that is his fault. Not very much of it. I mean, the injuries are really the key factor there. But, Nick Foles has had a very complicated career. If you look at him here and in other places he's been, he hasn't been able to hold on to a starting job for a long time. He's a guy that can be tremendous this week and next week and then be horrible the week after that. And that's kind of what his career has been. And he's also been hurt an awful lot. And it's curious, the people that are really never got over Nick leaving the Eagles kind of just sort of gloss over that. He gets hurt a lot more than Carson Wentz does.
Yeah.
He's lost jobs. He lost the job with the Eagles in 2014 because he got hurt. Yeah. And he lost the job in Jacksonville last year because he got hurt, and I like Nick a lot. His Super Bowl performance is probably the best big game performance in Eagles history.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to believe it is. I didn't see Tommy Thompson in the 49 championship game or whatever, but I have to believe that's the best big game any Eagles quarterback has ever played and maybe ever will play. But that doesn't make him the best quarterback. It just means he had the best game and maybe the best two games if you put the Minnesota game with that. I think Donovan had the best career. I think if Sonny Jurgensen hadn't been traded, he would be the best quarterback in Eagles history. He had a wonderful career, not much of it with the Eagles. They traded him. Jaworski and Cunningham. Cunningham probably better than Jaworski to me. But it's kind of like with LaShawn McCoy at running back, he's the all-time rushing leader for the franchise.
Yeah.
His total wouldn't come close to being the all-time rushing leader for very many other teams. The Eagles really haven't had a lot of great running backs in recent times. Steve Van Buren when it was a 12-game season and stuff like that. But by default, LaShawn McCoy is the best running back in Eagles history. So, it's kind of like that with quarterback. I mean, McNabb had the best career, but his career wasn't what it could have been. And I think Wentz can still be the best quarterback in Eagles. I think he has a lot of time left to do that. We'll see.
If Wentz stayed healthy, do the Eagles still win the Super Bowl?
I think so because he was playing so extraordinarily well, and the offense was producing uh, very, very well. It's hard to make a case that they wouldn't have been able to do offensively the same things.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick wasn't very good against the Falcons. They could have lost that game if Julio Jones catches the pass in the end zone.
Yeah.
I can't say that they would not have. The offense hasn't been as good since 2017, regardless of who was running it. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Some of that has to do with adjustments other teams have made. Some of it has to do with receivers. I don't really. It's fascinating. Some of it has to do with coaches changing, I think. But neither Nick nor Carson was as good after 2017 in the Eagles' offense as they were that year. So I don't know.
Carson, he had good numbers last season. He almost threw for 30 touchdowns, and unfortunately was obviously injured in that playoff game. How do you see him coming into the new season? Do you think that he could reach that 30 touchdown mark, or how do you see it?
Yeah, I think he could. To me, he had maybe 3 bad weeks there that really sort of fueled a narrative. But then down the stretch, he authored all those fourth quarter comebacks, which was something he was being maligned for not having done previously. He got them into the playoffs. And I think he showed that he's a top 10 type quarterback. You'd like for him to be a top 5 type quarterback, which he was in 2017. He has some work to do to get there. I think he has to be a little more consistent, a little more accurate. I think he has to make quicker decisions. And that could entail, I don't mean necessarily just throwing the ball quicker. I mean just deciding whether you're going to run or pass quicker and getting, doing one or the other. That Jadeveon Clowney thing happened in the playoffs kind of on a play that he took a long time to figure out what he was going to do, and he, was kind of trying to run, and it just, I think he should have thrown that ball or he should have tucked it earlier, He can be better, but I think with better receivers and they've really made some changes to the offensive staff here. And I'm real curious as to how that all works out with Rich Scangelo and Marty Morningweg and a couple other people brought in. I think they needed a little bit of a shakeup there. I think they needed some new ideas. And I think Carson will be, if he embraces those ideas, I think there's a very good chance that he gets into the top 5 as an NFL quarterback.
And sorry.
Oh, so you like the offensive assistants more than an offensive coordinator?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would have liked to have seen a great offensive coordinator. The problem they have is, as long as Doug is calling the plays, the group of people that you're choosing from that want to come here and have somebody else call the plays doesn't include the brightest, most in-demand guys in the world, because they're not getting to really run their offense, What they did, I think, made sense in that context. If you're not going to really have an offensive coordinator in the sense that somebody who calls the plays and makes a lot of decisions, then you need a sort of a group of advisors maybe who can bring this aspect or that aspect into Doug Peterson and have him. And to his credit, that's one of the reasons they won the Super Bowl, was that back then Doug was very receptive. People saying, maybe we should do this. I hope he still is. And if he is, I think this could work very well. But obviously it'd be great if they brought in that guy from LSU that, that was had the best offense in football last year. That'd be neat, but he wasn't going to come here and not call plays. So,
So one final question before we let you go. The Eagles 9-7 last season in 2019. What do you see their record being this year?
Well, a lot of variables there. I kind of see them around the same level. I think the division will be better.
Yeah.
I think the NFC is tough right now. I think they really need to get off to a good start, which might be tough in a year when, so much is up in the air.
Mhm.
The way their schedule is set up, it looks the mid to three quarters part of the schedule is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be real optimistic to see them doing better than like 10-6, I think. But if they're healthy, who knows?
Yeah.
Andre Dillard, is he going to be a good left tackle? I don't know. There's a lot of variables to this. But I don't think if they're a terrible team, I'll be shocked.
Yeah.
I'll be more shocked by that than I will be if they're 14-2. I don't think they should be a bad team, but I think they still have some things. Howie Roseman talked about this being the first year of like a 3-year window, which leads me to believe that they know that they have things that they haven't quite solved yet. So we'll see. Maybe they've solved all of them and they're just not aware of it yet. But I'd say 9-7, 10-6.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you both, Jacobs. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And you can follow Les on Twitter at Les Bowen, and also you can see his articles in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. And thanks for being here.